So, I mean, I'll try to make it as short as possible here. You know, I've been covering the sport since 2007. Actually, for the first 2 years that I was covering MMA, I was never credentialed. They wouldn't credential me to UFC events because they always told me that I was too small. Even when I was working for Versus, which used to be one of their broadcast partners, I was working for Versus.com. So the website of their broadcast partner, and they even denied me a credential then. That's how, for lack of a better word, petty they were towards me for some strange reason. But once I got in, I developed a really good relationship with Dana White, and he was incredibly kind to me. I've said this before, but if I never speak to Dana White again, he will have given me more time and been more accessible to me than any fighter that I'll come across from now until the end of my career. He was tremendous towards me, and it's hard for me to say anything negative about him because he was really, really great for a young journalist kind of coming up. And then I started working for Fox in late 2011, which was a dream come true. I told my parents in 2001 that I wanted to get on TV. I wanted to be the Howard Cosell of MMA, and here I was working for Fox. And there were some conflicts that came up and some issues, and I had to sort of bend my own beliefs because when I was working at the events, the money was coming from the UFC, even though Fox was paying the UFC, and I didn't feel comfortable with that, and that led to some sticky situations. And I was actually fired a couple times because I tried to remain a very impartial and neutral journalist doing my own shows and my own coverage on MMAfighting.com, and they would get mad about some of the things that I was talking about. And then the final hammer came down in March of last year where they just kind of let me go from Fox. The UFC told Fox to let me go. Fox put up no fight and just said, a 2-minute phone call. Okay, we're done. And then in June, I was at UFC 199. I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but I don't want to bore you with all this. In June, I was at UFC 199 in Inglewood, California, and I reported that Brock Lesnar was in talks to come back and that Conor McGregor was fighting Nate Diaz at UFC 202. And right before the main event, I was called to the back. Dana was there, and he told me to get out of the building. He told me that I was banned for life, and that they would do everything in their power to ruin my career and that I wouldn't cover the UFC again. And that was a very emotional thing. And, I went on my show that Monday, and I really thought that, this is the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I really thought that, I was going to have to figure things out, and I was kind of coming at peace with it all, but I wanted to kind of put all the cards on the table. I wanted to just tell everyone what had happened to me over the last 5 years and the ups and downs and the sticky situations. I wanted no skeletons in my closet. Where I just told the whole story, and the viewership was nuts. It's crazy. Like every show, I try to get the best guests possible. I try to get like 6 to 8 guests, and the one show where I didn't have any guests is our most watched show. And then the best part, for me at least, what was most helpful was that people like Rich Eisen and Dan Patrick and Dan Lebitard and Rachel Nichols, Scott Van Pelt, incredible journalists, legendary journalists, broadcasters who, some of whom I've never met, went to bat for me and shed some light on this situation. I know that the UFC didn't want the world to know about this. They wanted this to remain in their little bubble, as had happened in the past with other journalists, and it just kind of exploded. And like you said, 48 hours later, they relented. And a lot of people still like to make fun of me that I got emotional on my show. I was shedding some tears. What they don't know is that I'm an incredibly emotional person. Like I average a cry a day. We watched a show called This Is Us, my wife and I, and I'm crying like 5 times an episode. I'm just you remember Dick Vermeil? Like I am Dick Vermeil. I cry so much. And so,
it's awesome. It's good that you put it out there though, man. Like you don't have to be Tommy Tough Guy. It's all right. I love
that's who I am. I cry a lot. And, what was emotional for me wasn't that my credentials were taken away. It was that I had a new baby coming, and the most powerful man in the sport was telling me, your career is over, and I'm going to do everything in my power to ruin your career. If you don't get emotional hearing that, I don't know what you're doing in your career. So it wasn't because I couldn't go to any UFC event. That would suck. I would hate that. But it was really because of what was happening around me, and I felt like, oh wow, I put all my eggs in this basket in this one sport, and now because of one decision and one irrational move on their part, it's over. And I've seen them do this to other people. And so, they relented. They gave me back the credentials. It was a little awkward at first going back to the first few events, but now to me, it's water under the bridge. I know people are still interested in it, and I'm fine talking about it. I've yet to speak to Dana about it. He did a scrum for UFC 207 right before the Ronda fight. And I asked him 2 questions, and he was totally fine. and that was nice. And, you know, hopefully one day we can get back to, you know, just the relationship that we had, not being best buds, hanging out, you know, partying, but just where I can interview him and ask him questions and things like that, because I think that, you know, it's healthier for everyone involved. But, I have not reached out to him. He has not reached out to me, and maybe one day there'll be an appropriate time to do so, but I don't feel like right now is.
Why was that the final straw for them? Can you explain what you just announced that Brock was in talks to fight before that they officially announced it?
Yeah. I prefer the word reported, right? I mean, no different than Schefter or any other, you know, Mortensen. Like, you know, you report things that you hear, you find out that they're true. If they're false, then you're in big trouble. But this was obviously true. And I didn't know when they were going to announce it. I didn't know how they were going to announce it, but I get a scoop like that. You're damn sure that I'm going to report it. And I would do the exact same thing again. I would not do a single thing differently. But what happened was, when I was working for Fox, I would go on this show called UFC Tonight every Wednesday. And my role was kind of like this Jay Glazer type of role, where I'd have, you know, 5 or 6 scoops, news and notes about what's going on. And it was a popular segment from what I'm told. And then I stopped working for Fox. So now I just work for my website. But when I was working for Fox, I would hold on to a lot of stories because I needed to get 5 or 6 stories a week for that segment. And what people don't understand, even the people at Fox didn't understand, is it's hard to get 5 or 6 scoops a week in the UFC, because unlike Jay Glazer, who covers the NFL, he has to deal with 30 owners, 30 GMs, 30, you know, head coaches, a hell of a lot more players. There's a lot more out there. I'm dealing essentially with one ownership, right? I'm dealing with one group, and they love to control what goes out there. They tell all their fighters not to talk to the media. All the managers are afraid. So you're stopping short at selling, you know, your firstborn son, to try to get, you know, some of this information. So now that I was free and didn't have to do that, I was just reporting things when I got them. And they were getting annoyed that I was beating them to the punch. And, you know, I know, so when they let me go, they tried to replicate that segment, and they tried to just, you know, make up a segment where they were just, the UFC was giving, you know, a reporter some news that they wanted out at the appropriate time. And I know as a journalist, Wednesday night at 8 o'clock on FS1, they're going to break some news, because they're going to try to tell everyone that it's all okay here. You know, it's business as usual. So as a reporter, if I know that there's news to be broken, that it's coming, I'm going to try to get it. Of course, that's my job. And so they were getting annoyed that I was out scooping them. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. You know, no different again than what Woj does for the NBA draft. You know, he gets the news, he puts it out there. If you don't want to follow him, you don't have to follow him. But news is news.